I work at TASC, so we're a think tank for action on social change, and I work in our climate justice area. So TASC's climate justice work really aims to ensure that communities across Ireland, the island of Ireland, benefit from climate action. And we primarily do that through our People's Transition work. So the People's Transition is a model that was developed by TASC, authored by Sean McCabe in TASC at the time. It brought in years of research, but it was published in 2020. And essentially, it's a model that views climate action as an enabler of development. And it gives people and communities a voice in and ownership over the transition to zero emissions. And I suppose the research coming up to that publication, our research has shown that people have competing priorities on a daily basis, such as housing or healthcare or cost of living, and climate can tend to fall to the wayside. So I suppose we believe what we need to do is link those two things. We need to align climate action with local development. So what does a People's Transition project look like? Every project is quite different that we've ran because every community is different. But I suppose essentially there's three core phases to a project. A mapping phase, which takes in desk-based research and really pinpoints a community or a region and tries to build a picture of what that area looks like. The second phase then is all around listening to the community and the people living there and really focusing on hearing from harder to reach groups as well. And then finally, a co-creation solution phase where TASC works with the community and maybe other organizations in the area, like the local development companies, to co-design solutions that both solve a local development need, but also contribute towards a just transition and climate action. So I suppose to give you a flavour of one of our projects that we've completed in the past, throughout last year, we worked with the Irish Central Border Area Network on a project called Border Transition, building peace through community-led climate action. So that was funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs as a peace and reconciliation response, essentially because during COVID, a lot of that cross-community and collaboration and engagement basically came to a halt, as it did across the country, really, and the island. And we worked with 6 very small communities there, kind of at the point where Cavan, Monaghan and Fermanagh meet around the Loch Macneen lakes. So I suppose what we really took from that project and from a very intensive listening phase, listening to people from all over the area, is that there's many strengths, particularly in relation to kind of sustainable food production. It's a beautiful area and people really, really value that. There's a lot of tight-knit communities and there's a lot of interesting things coming down the line, like the Enniskillen to Sligo Greenway, which will pass through a number of the Loch Macneen communities. Some of the challenges that came up, I suppose the main one that we heard over and over again was a piece about, I suppose, local democracy. People felt they didn't really have any say in or ownership over local development. And that kind of, I suppose, one example of how that manifested in the area was around resistance to wind farms. And when you dig a little deeper into that, we found that the people that we spoke to don't actually resist wind or wind energy or renewable energies. It's more so that they resist not being consulted, not being engaged, and really not gaining anything from these projects, viewing them really as extractive, another form of extractive industry. Other challenges that arose from the people that we spoke to were around the cost of energy bills, cold and old houses and homes, and the reliance on oil in the area, and then to heat homes. And then finally as well, issues around depopulation and outmigration of young people. Although when we did speak to young people, the feeling was really that they wanted to stay, but it was hard when there's no jobs to stay for. So I suppose taking all of that away, we did a bit of research and brought some ideas back to the community then at the end of June last summer. And one idea for a project or a solution that really took off was an idea around a community energy cooperative focused on geothermal energy. So taking heat from below the surface of the ground or the lakes in the nearby area. And we were actually inspired by a community called Edenderry Village Energy in County Down, who are doing something very similar, taking heat from a nearby river that flows just past their kind of area, and creating a community-owned district heating system from that. So really, really inspiring stuff. And actually the two communities came together and met each other, which was really brilliant as well. We've been talking to the geological surveys of Northern Ireland and in the Republic, Queen's University in Belfast, and a number of other stakeholders. So we're exploring funding for a feasibility study for that at the moment, which is brilliant. And maybe just before I finish, I'll give a quick example of another project that we ran, another People's Transition project, a pilot project where it's a little bit further developed. And that was a project that we ran in Phibsborough in Dublin. And following that People's Transition project, a number of organisations and community groups, including Bohemian Football Club, Mountjoy Prison, the Technological University of Dublin, used to be DIT, along with community groups like the Sustainable Energy communities, have come together and have been successful in applying for Hubble climate action funding. So they've actually been awarded $500,000 towards the development of a climate co-op. And that co-op is going to focus on retrofitting. So the idea is that this cooperative, this idea, will actively respond to the community needs identified during the project. So things that came up were better standards of housing, the need for cheaper energy bills, and more local employment and apprenticeship opportunities. So the co-op will focus on linking kind of new skills training being offered, so thinking of the university, and it will also aim to support people at a distance from employment to participate in the labour market. So thinking of Mountjoy Prison and other organisations in the area. So it's really exciting to see that one come off the ground and into reality. And that's the work essentially that we're trying to do over the next 3 years, is to connect climate action to local development and community wealth building. We're working with a number of local development companies and have a couple of other ongoing projects that I can talk about more maybe in the Q&A. Can be quite challenging. As TASC, over the next 3 years, we have funding to implement the People's Transition across the island of Ireland. So we do support the communities that we've worked with beyond the kind of formal end of the project report launch, with funding applications and that kind of thing. What really came across during the Border Transition project, when the 6 communities came together, is, as I understand it, this feeling that they're usually competing for funding. But when they came together, they realized they have very similar issues that also have present similar opportunities. So it became evident to those 6 communities that it would be a lot more strategic and beneficial to go for that, to kind of pool together and go for funding as one cohort. And maybe to give another example, we're working with Ballyhowra local development company. So that's in Limerick and North Cork. And we're developing a green and just transition strategy. And we're really doing that with all eyes on the upcoming LEADER programme. So I suppose working with knowing what funding is coming up down the line as well. In terms of all voices, Susie Cavan actually at the wheel would have pioneered some of these approaches at TASC. But some of the things that we do as part of our border project, we held an art competition with a number of the local primary schools as a kind of a visioning exercise. You know, what do they want to see their local area look like in the future to make it better for people and planet? And it's really amazing, the stuff that comes back. But it's also a way to capture the ideas of younger people and people who don't always have a voice at the table in the project process. We also held some focus groups in Loughlin House Open Prison in Cavan, which is a prison where people are coming towards the end of their sentences. So as you can imagine, there's a huge opportunity there around reskilling when they come out of prison. So yeah, we really kind of put a big emphasis on hearing from those who are usually harder to hear from. We've been lucky in the past that the things that have come off the ground are those we kind of went where the energy was in terms of the community and the stakeholders that we've talked to. So it's matching, I suppose, where the energy is in the room with the funding opportunities that are there, and to have the best chance of getting things off the ground. And really the co-creation side of things as well. We had a lot of ideas that were raised by the communities themselves that we went away and researched and came back and shared all the different options and essentially went through a prioritizing process. The community that I mentioned in Down Edenderry Village Energy, as I understand it, they're amazing. And they took a similar approach in that they're a group of community members and they pull in people, I think, from the area according to their kind of expertise. A few of them are engineers, so they would have kind of done the initial groundwork on this district heating idea and transferred it into plain English as well. And then together they would have found the right person the right consultant, I suppose, to do the feasibility for that feasibility study for that one, which is kind of interesting to see that idea playing out in real life. In addition, I suppose at TASC, we would often take a community wealth building approach. So community wealth building is, I suppose, a people-centered approach to economic development. It was pioneered in Preston in the UK. There's lots of good examples out there on it. And a key part of that is this idea of the anchor institution and these kind of large-scale organizations in an area that have roots to the area and aren't going to leave, but also have important supply chains and spend a lot of money around the area. And I've kind of given an example of what that looks like in the Phibsborough project with Bohemians, which is a cooperatively owned football club. So they have experience of being a co-op for, I think, 130 years now, involving DITU Dublin in the partnership allows that kind of expertise in skills and training for the retrofitting cooperative to be included. And bringing in Mountjoy as well as a large anchor institution in the Phibsborough area allows for the inclusion of kind of back to work schemes and employment of people at a distance from employment. So at the same time, there's, I think, maybe 4 different community groups involved in the partnership as well. So I think that coming together of those more public organizations and community groups, kind of a big picture way of bringing it all together. But it's, yeah, fantastic to see it happening in Dublin.